Hey Connor,
Aron, how things going?
it's been a month, man. It's been quite the month for you for the no code world. So I'm excited to have you back for no code talk number 4. Can you believe it's been 4 months that we've been doing this?
I know, I know. Well, the goal initially was to do 6 of these, so I feel like we are very, very well on track. But it's been good fun. It's always good to kind of have to do a little bit of research into like what's going on in the no-code space in anticipation for this each month. So yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, we've got our regulars. We've got Steven, Colleen, Magarel. Welcome to No Code Talk. Connor and I have picked a few things that have crossed our radar. But yeah, we want to kind of open it up to you guys. If you have anything you want to talk about today, let us know. This is more, I don't have anything, Airtable focused I want to show off. There's been just so much happening. So the 4 things we want to talk about today first is, a lot of, I don't know if a lot of people, but like Connor and I, we talk every week and we're often like, oh, should we try this new tool? We hear a lot of hype around a new tool. So I want to talk a little bit about how we think about picking new tools in our toolbox. Then,
Mhm.
you know, Webflow memberships, huge news. So wanted to get your take. Let us know in the chat what you've been kind of excited about for Webflow membership. Then quick update from you on Unicorn Factory and kind of the learnings that you've gone through going from New Zealand to Canada. And finally, we're going to talk about Code Meets No Code, which is a kind of project that Connor and I have been working on for a while. But that's our agenda. We've got a bunch of time today. So let us know in the chat what you're hoping we cover today. But I am kind of super excited to dig in here. So, Connor, how about intro us? I know you and I kind of have a similar philosophy, but how do you think about using new tools? How do you approach a new tool? Do you even consider it? Talk to a little bit about your philosophy there.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of an interesting one because I get a lot of people from a lot of questions from people who want to know like what tools they should use to build their own online marketplace, and they're kind of like want an exact breakdown on why I chose something like Webflow and Airtable and Zapier and stuff like that. But I think one thing that is very important to know about the tools that I chose to get started was that I didn't really have a plan. Like when I started the Unicorn Factory, version 1.0 was actually just Webflow. And like the main purpose behind it was just so I could build a landing page, because that was in my mind all I needed. A
Mm-hmm.
simple landing page so I could collect leads. And as long as I could collect leads, it was kind of job done. And then over time, things started getting a little bit busier. The work that I'd have to do manually started to add up, which is when I started to look into potential tools that I could use to potentially automate some workflows, all those types of things. And so I kind of discovered Airtable and Zapier more out of necessity rather than out of strategy.
Right.
And so nowadays, when people are thinking about what tools they should use, I feel like there's a tendency to overanalyze it and
Mm,
to kind of look a bit too far in the future in terms of what you might want to build with your project. And that oftentimes gets in the way of the actual building side of the project. So when it comes to picking no code tools, I start off with probably one that basically solves the issue at hand, which in my case was I need to get a bunch of landing pages up for different freelancers. And then I search for new tools based on the issue that I'm trying to solve at hand. And I
mm,
think a real important one is to not anticipate problems as much,
mm,
because that is one thing that I oftentimes see people doing. It's like, well, what am I going to do in to make sure that I can track interactions between customers and freelancers? I'm like, well, why don't you just cross that bridge when you get to it?
right.
And yeah, especially nowadays with like no code just like really leveling up. Like even if we just have a look at what's happened in the last year in terms of the tools that have been like launched, there is a lot out there, and it can very quickly seem like, you have to switch between different
Mm,
tools. But I just wanted to say that that is kind of the approach that I've taken. Solve one problem at a time. try and solve it with the tools that you have first. But if you can't, then research tools that solve that specific use case.
Yeah. I have a similar approach that is like no new tools ever. Honestly, I will go to the ends of the earth before I will use a new tool, right? So just because it, like, every time you add a new tool into your toolbox is like another place where things could go wrong, right? And I think you're exactly right. Like, how far can you go with just Webflow, right? How far can you go with just Airtable as your backend? And, you know, a lot of people will kind of be like, oh, but I could save like $20 a month by adding this new tool into my toolkit that's like focused on this one particular thing. But often what you end up with is like, yeah, but what is $20 to you, right? Is that 15 minutes of your time? Is that an hour of your time? Are you actually saving what is valuable to you? So personally, I even like Parabola, which I played around with last year, really got deep into. Today I'm like, oh, well, maybe I could use it in my toolkit, but I was still always think about like, what is the core functionality I'm trying to solve? Can I solve it with my existing tools? And if it's like, no, at that point, maybe I'll tweet and say I need a new tool, but rarely, just because I think people love using new tools, but the complexity that it generates just isn't worth it. So yeah, I think we're both kind of aligned here. Never or rarely use new tools. If you absolutely need to, find one that like covers that exact niche that you want. But don't try to have a stack of 8, 12, 15, 20 different tools.
For sure. Like, I completely agree. The more tools, the more complex it gets. But there's actually like another element that I actually just thought about is now, when people built products in the past and you had to hire developers for it, you actually had to kind of like lay out all the features that you would want them to build. It was not like, you know, everyone says like build an MVP and all that kind of stuff. But like when you hire developers, it's not as practical as when you're building it yourself. So I feel like a lot of people who kind of do research into product development side of things, they kind of take an approach of like, what is the list of features that I'm going to need? As if they're handing it over to someone. But you don't actually need to take that approach because you're actually the person building it yourself, which means that you can iterate a lot easier over time. And so even though it may feel at the time that you might need something like member chat that allows your customers to chat with each other, like, it's not actually necessary in order to start generating value through whatever you're building. And like you said, most importantly, it keeps things super simple. And I feel like that is key,
So,
especially when you're just getting into it.
Connor, can I admit something to you and to everyone watching? The reason we like new tools is because the joy of doing something with a new tool like stops us from doing the hard stuff, which is like marketing and the things we don't enjoy doing, right? And you know, I say this as someone who loves kind of looking at new tools. It's like, yeah, like, oh, could I like learn how to do this really complex thing that doesn't actually add value to whatever project I'm working on? And actually behind that is like, I don't want to do the hard work of cold emailing people or reviewing my copy or getting more leads in. It's actually like that becomes what we enjoy. So let's kind of hold each other accountable to say, do we actually need this tool? And are we just hiding the work that we actually have to do?
I love it, Aron. That actually reminds me, when the first startup that I did out of university was this like Tinder for food deals app. And at the time, like I worked with two friends who were both developers, and we were kind of getting to crunch time where it was like go out, market, and sell. But you know, when it's your own thing, you're not really familiar with the whole marketing and sales world. You know, it's quite easy to delay the inevitable. So I started requesting the most nonsense features in the world, and one of those features, I have to tell you, was I was like, we need an Uber integration in this app,
Of course,
so that when people find their like places that they want to go, they need to get there somehow. And it's just like, I see this all the time. It's actually kind of funny because it always reminds me of that story, but it's a really great way to avoid the inevitable, which is to go out marketing, do
do the hard stuff,
selling the dream. Yeah, the hard stuff for sure.
The actual hard stuff. So, folks, spend less time learning new tools and more time, you know, promoting your things or going out in the world and actually kind of building whatever it is that you want to build. So, what we promise is we'll keep each other accountable, and we won't talk about any tool unless it's actually we think value add, and we'll be kind of clear when that's the case. Cool. Okay. Well, irony here. We just spent 15 minutes while we were like, you shouldn't add any new tools. And then we're like, let's talk about this new tool that just came out or is going to come out. So, Webflow memberships. So let's jump into that. And let me go ahead and share my screen here. Boom. Okay. So, Connor, you and I are big MemberStack fans. We are users of MemberStack. We have memberships on top of Webflow. But Webflow not obviously, I don't think they had to do this, but announced that they're going to launch memberships at NoCodeConf. What do you think? So let's kind of go through here. So it sounds like we're going to have the ability to have users as a CMS kind of category, right? Right here, you're going to be able to gate content. So grow your business with recurring revenue. So it sounds like it's just going to be gated content, different from their e-commerce offering, which can add digital goods, right? Then what else do we have here? It's a nice website. Your restrict content, right? So you're going to be able to pick which pieces of content or URLs are going to be gated. You have a trial. So I'm just kind of going through user systems, which is kind of cool. So what do you want to be able to have? So this feels like natural for Webflow, right? Highly anticipated, highly exciting. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts, Connor, relative to Webflow memberships?
Yeah, well, I mean, memberships has been requested for the last like 2.5 years, I think. I think it's been like number one with a margin on the Webflow wish list forever. And to be completely honest, when I got into Webflow, it was definitely like a limitation. Like, obviously, Webflow didn't start as like a tool that's supposed to do that. It started off as a tool that allows you to build websites, and it did that, and it still does that amazingly well. But obviously, as people start to come in, there's a need for certain features, and memberships was always one. And so, MemberStack was actually started as a result of that being on the wish list. And so it's for starters, exciting to see that it's been launched. And I'm also very interested to see how it's turned out and what use cases they'll be solving, what features they'll have in the beta, because like we've got to be honest as well, it's like this is like version 1.0 that they're launching to public, so that means that there are going to be certain things that are not going to be there in launch. And it's going to be interesting to see how that affects people who are currently using MemberStack. So yeah, I mean, just my personal thoughts on all of this. I'm keeping an open mind about it, so about both. So I haven't decided whether I'm going to continue to go down the MemberStack path or the Webflow path, because MemberStack works for me. Everything that I need it to do, it does. Now, there are a few things that MemberStack doesn't do that I think Webflow is uniquely positioned to solve, which is things, for example, being able to link a user to a certain collection, that type of stuff. But ultimately, if the key use cases that Webflow is going to be solving straight off the gate or straight like from the speeder is like gated content, then MemberStack does a pretty good job of that. So that's point number one. Point number two is MemberStack is complicated to set up. Like if you're not familiar with MemberStack or working with a certain level of code, then this might be a really good option to like get a membership site up and running. And so I feel like there are definitely going to be people who are going to start membership businesses as a result of this being launched. And yeah, I mean, to be completely honest, before I make my mind up on what I'm going to do, I just need to see what's in this beta.
Yeah. So what's interesting is that you really you are talking from the point of view of someone who uses MemberStack, and I think it would be a mistake to think of Webflow as like looking at MemberStack or any third-party kind of integration here and say like, oh, well, let's go after their market. right? I think that's a mistake, right? Because Webflow is huge. It's way bigger than MemberStack. It's way bigger than any of their third-party players. And so,
Mhm.
what I see the space here is, well, like, what about every single person who hasn't launched a membership, right? Who didn't want to invest in a third-party tool or didn't even know that you could do it, right? So I wouldn't kind of see them as trying to take over something that third-party integrations have done very well. So I get it from both of us. Like we think about this from like MemberStack's perspective, right? Because we're users. But what I'm excited about a membership is like, what does this unlock for folks who haven't built a membership example? So one thing I always think about, and I really hope that Webflow does this, is, there are so many creators on TikTok for recipes, right? So I curate recipes from TikTok, and there's no good way of monetizing that. I would pay $20 a month just to have like recipes from the 5 people that I love, and I hope that Webflow makes it super easy for these smaller creators to be able to spin up a membership website, have it look really good, really unique. I think a challenge that I foresee here is, how do you square this with Webflow's focus on enterprise? Right? So most of Webflow's enterprise clients, have a business behind their website that is not their website. So how do you square away these two types of audiences? One that is like medium, maybe small businesses who really enjoy Webflow and Webflow memberships, versus this push into larger and larger clients who are not going to use this functionality, right? Where focus might be a little split between all of these different things that they're doing, especially that there's a third-party tool that does it very well, right? So that is kind of my big concern, is who is this for? And then second, how does it fit into Webflow's larger kind of strategy? And are they able to execute across both of these, right? So there's some, Steven's already all in. So Steven's all in on Webflow memberships. And I'm curious, like, has anyone gotten access to it, right? So I haven't joined it. Connor, have you heard of anyone who's joined it so far?
I haven't, but I've been hitting up Nelson nonstop, and he stopped replying to me on Slack.
we're not big fish enough. That's totally fine. I don't blame him. I'm sure he's getting, and the whole Webflow team is getting. So like, I'm really excited about Webflow memberships. I think it's interesting. One thing that Colleen brings up is really interesting, is like pricing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Frankly, I'm not too worried about pricing. I expect it to be maybe free, maybe even like fees, or slightly cheaper than MemberStack. So for me, pricing is not a big thing. I know you had some thoughts, Connor, on pricing.
I mean, you don't know, Aaron. Like obviously, like we've got to look at it in the grand scheme of things, pricing wise, and like realistically speaking, if you look at the opportunity costs before no code, like what you pay now is like nothing.
It doesn't matter.
But I'm not gonna lie to you. I do have some slight concerns.
Okay.
Because and this is just my personal opinion. I think back to when they launched Webflow e-commerce, and yeah, I feel like they priced themselves on the higher end of them. Like they were priced pretty much the same as Shopify. And don't get me wrong, Webflow is like hands down like the best web design, web building tool.
Mm-hmm.
But Webflow e-commerce in itself, as it was launched, was not close to the Shopify level.
Of course.
And I kind of feel if you want to bring those users in, you have to kind of price it appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think it's going to be a big deal. I think it could go two ways. Either they look at it and they say, hey, look, this has been the most requested feature on our wish list. We can price it higher because there's clearly demand for it.
Right.
Which I think to some extent is true. I mean, like there is proof for incredibly high demand. Or they could basically make it a bit cheaper, potentially even price it like their e-commerce plans,
right,
and make it more accessible to people to start membership sites.
Right.
If I had to guess, I think they're going to price it pretty much the same as they priced e-commerce. but to be seen.
Okay.
At the end of the day, yeah.
I have a take. And maybe it'll bear fruit or not. I actually think like Shopify is a good example, right? So I don't think the blocker for an e-commerce store is the price you pay for your website, right? I just don't think that's true. Even if you charge $50 a month or $100 a month, like if you're making money on the web, that's like chump change, right? So generally, I think Shopify makes money today is actually on transaction fees, right? They make a percentage of every sale online, and that's like orders above what they make on SaaS pricing, right? And that's just more recent as they're taking over payment. So I hope that Webflow will do the same thing, right? Realize that like what you gain by pricing it low or cheap is like it doesn't really matter in the greater scheme of things, as long as you make it as easy as possible for people to make money on the web and you can make money there, right? So it is true for me, if you take 10% of money that I'm making, I don't mind as much, right? Because you're enabling me to make money on the web. And so I think like in the longer scheme of things, I hope that they price it cheap, but I hope that it's so successful that people don't even care about the upstart cost, right? Because where Webflow will make money is on the back end. So I actually started there by saying pricing doesn't matter, but I actually think it does matter in the sense of it should be easy to start, and you could charge a lot of money on the percentage, right, of what people are making online, and not make the price of entry a barrier. So it was a bad take. Finally, it was a take that it should be cheap.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can look at it in a lot of different ways. There are some people who, don't want to pay that transaction fee. Like, there's so many like form building web tools out there that I just refuse to use because they have like some silly transaction fee.
Right.
Where it's kind of like, so I think that there'll be like a range of it. I think ultimately the thing to keep in mind is, even though I think a lot of people will prefer like a native solution for memberships, there is an option, there is an alternative to Webflow memberships, and that is MemberStack. So I kind of am hoping that they'll price themselves around like similarly to that. At the end of the day, I think I'm going to try it no matter what. I'm going to build a site using Webflow memberships just so I have something to compare. But it's a big one. It's been a big piece in the no code space. So
absolutely,
it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So it seems like in the chat, folks are hoping, especially Steven, that it's baked into their existing pricing. And I do agree with Steven that like if you add another dimension that you price on, so teams versus e-commerce versus memberships, percentages, I think Webflow is going to have, some pricing difficulties, right? And just as a user and understanding it, but we're all hoping that it's cheap out of the gate and make money off the back end on actually enabling creators to build businesses. Frankly, I'm probably going to give it a try as well. I hope that there's a good API that I can integrate with Airtable, obviously, because that's where all of my information lives. Zapier integration would be great, but I'm sure those are all things that'll come. So when it is going to go out, Connor, we'll get on a stream, and we'll probably do a live session of just building in Webflow membership, and it'll be a lot of fun.
Well, we could potentially build parts of Code Meets No Code with Webflow membership.
Absolutely. So you're foreshadowing. We have one more thing we have to talk about before we jump into Code Meets No Code. Cool. And Magarel, there's a question around which community should you join. We're going to talk about that like in 10 minutes, right? So stay tuned. Cool. Okay. I think we've said everything there is. We've said enough about memberships, Webflow memberships. When it comes out, the day that it's available, or the day that I get it or you get it, Connor, we'll jump on a stream. We'll do an emergency little stream, and we'll play around with it and migrate websites and see how it feels and talk about limitations at that point. So that's a promise to you all. Cool. Okay. So, Connor, you have been working. Let me move ourselves out of the way. You have been working on Unicorn Factory Canada. So why Unicorn Factory Canada? And this isn't like a sales pitch for folks to join Unicorn Canada, but I think there's some learnings that you've learned, especially with like using new tools So I wanted to kind of give you the chance to chat about that and tell us a little bit of what you learned creating Unicorn Factory Canada.
Cool. Well, yeah, I've moved to Canada. So like this was my big opportunity to take like just a platform that I was using in New Zealand and take it to another country. And like when I started the Unicorn Factory, like I think people sometimes sit down and have like vision. They come up with their like, mood boards and visions and all that kind of stuff. I kind of just roll with it. It's worked out really well in New Zealand. Like I'm really proud of what I created over there. A lot of people get like a lot of good opportunities to get their start as a freelancer. We've got like fantastic freelancers on there. So when I came here, I wanted to create something similar here because I feel like, just connecting people, businesses and local freelancers to each other just shouldn't be as complicated as it is. And so, yeah, but all that aside, I went through the process of rebuilding the entire thing. So, even though Webflow does have copy and paste functionality, it's not as simple and straightforward as it sounds. So I've actually gone through the process of taking all the learnings that I got through building the Unicorn Factory New Zealand and basically starting from scratch with the Unicorn Factory Canada. And this was a really great thing to do because it's kind of allowed me to see how I could potentially standardize that process of building these marketplaces.
Right.
So one of the things that I observed as the Unicorn Factory New Zealand started to scale is that things started getting pretty messy. Okay, because you don't like maybe people do. I don't. I just am kind of like, well, this doesn't work. Let's sit down and come up with a workflow that fixes that, or this is time consuming. Let's come and build something that's that. But like when you take an approach where you just solve things on the go, things get all over the place.
Right.
And I decided that I needed to clean things up, and starting the Unicorn Factory Canada was a great way to do that. So I think what we're going to talk about today is my little Airtable base that I've started setting up. Now, this is still in the very early stages. I'm still working on it. But basically what I am building here is an overview of all the workflows, all the Webflow pages, email templates, tools that I'm using, so that I have a high-level overview of what is happening with the Unicorn Factory. And so this is going to be important for me because I outsource a bit of work and it's been increasing. I've been doing that even more now. And I need a way to make sure that if I am going to get someone to work on like my workflows or work on my Webflow sites, that they kind of can jump in, see what's going on. And so this is kind of what I've built. It's an overview with all of my workflows. When certain issues come up, I can just mark it the status differently. If I change a certain workflow, if I delete a workflow, I can change it to inactive. I've broken it down by all the different tools, and yeah, it's just I think an important thing to do if you want to build a no-code platform that you hopefully can scale over time. And when I scale, I don't just mean scale that one platform. That means also if you set up a second version of your website, like I did with Canada, that you actually have a bit of a manual that you can follow so that you can then, kind of standardize the way that these sites get built.
Yeah. So I think what's interesting in this is like, and when you showed me this, why I insisted that we show it on the stream, because this is like a meta almost Airtable of things happening in different tools, right? And I think your amazing point of like, once you standardize and write out everything that happens, it's much easier to say to someone like, hey, can you take this over? And here's the information and the context that you need to understand this like underlying part of my workflow. So I'm sure that people are kind of looking at this and are like, oh, like delete members. How do you do that? Right. And what's great about it is that you actually write out like, okay, I use parabola. It's this area. The last time this was updated, it's here. And you even have like little images that talk about, what this does. So this is a link to the actual workflow, right, when available. So it's like a great example, I think, what everyone should do as a way of standardizing the way they work. Once you get to a place of like, okay, this is working pretty well. I have 50 things that happen in order for this workflow to happen. How do I document that to let anyone look at it? Second, it's a great place to come in and be like, okay, these are the things I need to improve, right? So you have a
Mhm.
status and you can organize and say like, okay, the next thing in my underlying workflow that I want to improve is this, and then work
Mhm.
towards it, and you're automatically documenting it. So, and we've talked about this. I've written about this on the newsletter. Like, there is no good way to see how workflows work across different tools, but this is
Mhm.
a perfect example of how you can do that yourself and document it.
Yep. And you can use the web clipper tool as well. So you just jump
Mm,
into Zapier, you have your web clipper with all of your fields predefined, and you can just drop it all in there, which is a huge time saver. And honestly, like whether you want to create multiple locations for your freelancer marketplace or whatever, getting in the habit of processing documenting these things is going to make things so much easier when outsourcing,
yeah.
you know. And especially if you when you're dealing with something that has so many moving parts, if you don't want to break things, like make very clear how it works.
Yeah.
And so yeah, this is kind of how it is now. And actually, just this is like breaking news. I'm seriously considering moving all of my workflows from Zapier to Integromat.
Okay.
Um, and so now I actually have a manual of what every little thing does inside of Zapier.
Right.
So it's going to make the process of rebuilding them a lot easier.
Right. So that's actually a really good point. When you're migrating tools, right, now you're able to say, like, okay, what do I run in Zapier? You can open this up and be like, okay, here are all the different things I need to migrate in order to like remove Zapier from my workflow. So two questions for you. One is why move everything to Integromat? And then two, how are you thinking about going to like about doing that?
Mhm. To be completely honest, I've changed my mind about Integromat. When I started using it the first time, they had some very infuriating UX issues
Okay.
that really just turned me off from
Right.
using it. Like, for example, you'd map all of your different fields, but you'd have to manually hit the save button that was hidden somewhere down at the bottom. You'd have to scroll there. But I have been spending a bit more time in it, and I've actually discovered that they've got a lot of workflows where Integromat is like actually better than Zapier. I
Mm,
think especially the more advanced workflows, where you need to visually see how things work. Integromat just beats Zapier there all day of the week. It's
right.
just a lot more intuitive to do.
Right.
And there are definitely like a few little areas that need help with Integromat, but I kind of feel like pricing wise is a factor, you
Hmm.
know. Again, I don't think the Zapier is like crazily overpriced for what you get. But again, there's an opportunity cost. And also, I just feel like the fact that I've spent the last few months also learning how to code means I
Hmm.
can take full advantage of their like API tools
Right.
and webhook tools, which means that there are a lot more opportunities to actually set up really fun, more advanced workflows. And so I'm currently thinking about how to do that. And the second part of your question is like, honestly, I just will go through one after the other. Like
Hmm.
all the workflows that I've got set up inside of Zapier, I can set up inside of like Integromat.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be on the to-do list and I'm gonna smash through it.
So Stephen agrees with you, right? So he's also a big Integromat fan. I'm not there yet. I'm team Airtable automations plus scripting for everything. I will
Mhm.
I will try to keep as little as possible. And what's interesting, I do want to like what we said at the beginning, like Unicorn Factory runs on 5 tools, right? And that's, I think, what the most impressive. Really, you've got Airtable, Zapier, Integromat, Parabola, MailerLite, and obviously Webflow and MemberStack, right? Those are not the automation tools, but these are the tools that you're using, and you're kind of hoping to standardize to really get like as little of these tools. And I'm sure if you could run something that you currently run in Parabola, if you could run it in Integromat, you would probably go ahead and do it as well, right?
Yeah, I mean I like Parabola. I mean it's yeah, I mean I think Parabola is a cool tool. It serves I think I'll still use Integromat for individual events. So like things that are triggered by webhooks, whereas Parabola is still a tool that I'll use to sync databases. But again, the goal long term is not to have more tools, it is to have less tools. So
Absolutely.
if Integromat does the trick and I don't have to go through the process of it 15 times in order to get it right, then you never know.
Yeah.
I always say keep an open mind with these things, because you
Yeah.
never know what you'll learn from one day to the other.
You know what I think is going to happen? You're going to hit an issue in Integromat that's going to drive you wild. And just like, it's not going to save a scenario, or it's going to fail for a day or whatever. I hope that doesn't happen. But if it does.
No, it happens all the time. It still does.
So I hope you'll come here and give us a proper Connor rant
So,
about all the
yeah.
things that now don't work because you've moved to one tool.
Yeah, so I've had so many people like comment on my videos. It's like, yeah, we're still figuring out error handling. The thing that I find funny about Integromat is like when like an automation fails and you don't have error handling set up, it just turns off your automation.
It's like, no.
What kind of automation tool just turns off?
It's like, no, it failed once. It's never, we're never running this again.
For sure. It's just like, nah, sorry, doesn't
sorry.
work anymore. Whereas Zapier just keeps going,
Right.
So
right.
yeah.
Okay, well, come back to us with everything you learned about migrating to Integromat. Also, I'm sure, Connor, if you're open to it, I'd love for you to like open source this, just the base itself. So let Connor know if you're interested and you're thinking about documenting your workflows as well. Yeah, I was just so impressed by this. So I really wanted to show on the stream and talk a little bit about how folks could think about, standardizing to one place, but just being really good at documentation. And I do have to say, Colleen, as someone who works with me on Automate All the Things, I am nowhere near this well documented. So for that, I'm sorry. I will strive to be more like Connor and document my workflows. There's like a Loom folder with every one of my workflows, just quick video about it. And I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, well, I'm just getting started, I'm going to definitely hit you up for some little tips and tricks, because ultimately what I want to do is I want to add little explainer videos to every section.
Right.
And I want to make this like a library because long term, it would be so good if I could actually just get people to build like the unicorn factory in different countries. Right. And I just be like, here's what I want you to do. Here's the order. Here's the video. Watch it, build it. And I actually think that, yeah, I want to do it for the no-code stuff. I want to do it for my marketing stuff,
Right. Of course.
And so I'm getting there. I'm learning as I'm going.
Okay, you'll come back to us with all the questions you get about each video. And people asking, oh, it doesn't work exactly how I expected. So we'll keep that for another time. I would love, to have little videos, and I'm sure I would learn a ton as well. So let Connor know if you're interested. I'm sure he'll kind of share everything he builds out throughout. Okay, so Unicorn Factory, really appreciate you, Connor, kind of showing us how you're documenting. So let me just kind of boom. Okay, so code meets no code. We've been talking about it for a few months. Connor, tell us what what is code meets no code, and what drove us to kind of start working on this project.
Okay. So, obviously over the last few months, I've been, I think probably like 4 or 5 months ago, I made a video where I said that I think Airtable automations is the future. I then started playing with scripts, and now I'm almost certain that it is. Like, learning how to script was something that was so far out of reach for me when I started my no-code journey. It was actually the reason why I started my no-code journey. But recently, I've spent a lot more time with it. So obviously, we've worked on workflows together. We've jumped on calls and gone through the process of actually setting up workflows inside of Airtable using Airtable scripts. We went and set up button fields. And it's really shown me what you can actually do if you understand just a little tiny bit of code. And so I did a little series on my channel where I showed you how you can use Airtable scripts to do different things inside of Webflow. For example, create a Webflow item, update a Webflow item, or delete a Webflow item. And so before scripts came along, the only real way that you can do it is with an automation tool. But with those automation tools at times come certain limitations. For example, Zapier doesn't have a way for you to delete collection items.
Right.
So we talked about Airtable scripts. We worked on one where I think the one that you showed me was how I can send a welcome email
Yeah.
using Airtable scripts
Yeah.
through the MailerSend API.
Mm-hmm.
And that just kickstarted it for me. I was just like, this is amazing. And it's like kind of easy enough to follow. And so right now, I'm very excited about scripts. And I think this is like the perfect way for people who are already kind of advanced with no code tools, Zapier, Integromat, to take it just that little bit further.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea behind code meets no code is to basically share Airtable scripts that you can copy and paste into your own Airtable base. And then we'll be making a bunch of little videos where we will tell you how you can modify your scripts. With
Mm-hmm.
the idea being that you actually learn how scripting works by just doing little bits at a time. Because that is how you showed me, Aron. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, I can't believe that this is working. And then as soon as our call ended, I started playing around a little bit further. I started looking into the API documentation.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is amazing. I went from knowing nothing about scripts to now being able to create CMS items by clicking a button field. And so this is the idea behind it. We want to take like some common use cases that you would otherwise solve with Zapier and help you do it using Airtable scripts.
Yeah, and I think first, Connor, I think all the credit goes to you because you've really kind of worked through. You started with like, hey, how do I do an if statement to like I have now nailed down 4 API calls and I've like you can just change one thing at the top and it's and integrated all these different APIs. So I think all the credit goes to you. I'm just excited to have more people write simple code. And I think, we're starting with just a few Airtable scripts. But there was something in the chat that I think really spoke to me was, there's no reason why it has to happen in Airtable. Like I have a bunch of, API calls that run in Zapier. We have so many Webflow developers building snippets on top of Webflow that if you're not a developer or you're not familiar with it, you don't quite know how it works. So our goal here is really to kind of, yes, start with Airtable scripts, the one that we know, and kind of help people implement those. But from there, I'm imagining more of a low-code community, right, where we're sharing scripts. Connor and I are obviously generating a bunch, and other creators are going to build scripts on top of Webflow and other tools. But yeah, we want you to have more power, right? Not be limited by what click and drop tools can do. And when there is a little bit of code that you can use and reuse to level up. So yeah, I'm so excited about no code. Code meets no code. We do have the domain, but we wanted to quickly host it on Connor's website. So I just dropped that in the chat. If you sign up, what you get for the first ones are those videos that Connor already created, and now we're adding a bunch. So if you do sign up and you're interested, let us know. Like, oh, I would love to be able to do this, or I'd love to be able to do that. Just email us. We're going to create a list of scripts or APIs that people want to integrate and just start banging them out. Like, okay, here's how we think of doing this. If you want to help us write these, let us know. Like, we're super excited. And I'm personally super excited. Also, as someone who, until a year ago or a little less, didn't know how to write scripts in general. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, and even like the stream that you did last week about the Bannerbeer API.
Yeah,
like this stuff is like game changing. Like I know I might seem a bit hyped about this, but this is only because when I discovered the way that I feel about this right now is the way that I felt about like discovering tools like Zapier.
right.
Because like no code tools, I believe, can get you 80% of the way, like good no code tools. But then there'll be certain use cases that are very unique to you. And like if you already see what people are putting out there. So I know Corey has got a library of like amazing Webflow scripts. I mean, the work that Joe does with FinSuite has so much that allows you to push beyond the boundaries of the actual tools. And being able to like come up with those yourself feels so good.
So
and it doesn't take much.
I selfishly want to show off like an example outside of the no code world that is an example, and I do think you're right in crediting so many folks that are doing this as well, right? So Joe, Corey, Ben Parker, I steal his stuff all the time, right? So we just we want to add more scripts that you can use to really level up your no code example. So, but I do want to, like, for folks who are not low coders, who aren't quite like, why would I need this, right? I want to, are you okay, Connor, with me just showing this like 2-minute example of what's possible?
Yes.
So someone came to me and was like, hey, like, I want to create a food diary, right? So like someone trying to lose weight, that person is me, frankly, but I'm not going to use this because I'm not organized enough. But it kind of got me thinking of like, oh, could I create a low code way of tracking what you eat, the kind of calories, protein, and things like this? And I went on the web and I was like, oh, is there an API that can just tell me for any food what ingredients and what information is in it? And so I found this API. I think it's called, let me just find it. What's it called? It's called Calorie Ninja, obviously, right? And literally, like, I built this in 20 minutes. You can say I ate 2 apples. Let me just, a banana, I don't know, and 250 grams of milk. And what I did is you click this button, it runs the API call, and then it returns like the number of calories, the number of carbs, the number of protein. You can even check to kind of see what it understood. And like, I don't really care. I'm not gonna be hardcore about this. But the fact that took me like 15 minutes to create, right? And you can have your kind of daily summary of all the calories you've eaten, how much protein, whatever, and track your weight day over day. Is like a perfect example of what you can do once you have access to these APIs. And there are thousands or hundreds of thousands of APIs just like this that you can build. So what I hope people kind of take away from Code Meets No Code is like that 20% exactly as you did. Like, you find an API online, you want to use it, boom, you understand how, and we really want to kind of have the community tell us which tools they want to integrate, and we'll create scripts that everyone could reuse.
Yeah. Just a quick note on that example. There's
Yeah.
no way you're doing that in Zapier. No way you're doing that in Integromat.
Absolutely not.
And that is kind of the thing. Those developers can currently solve for that extra 20%.
Yeah.
And we're going to try and help you learn how to get at least to the 90% mark, 95% mark. And especially with like a community of people who are already like in the space, I'm just feeling so good about it.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, if you want to get like a little preview, the website is not going to be on my personal website, but you can already get a preview of how it could work. So you can just log in. There are free tutorials in there. It has the videos that you can watch as well as the code snippets, and you can just copy and paste them over. So if you are already working with Webflow and Airtable, then you can just go ahead and try it out.
Yeah. And a quick follow, we're hoping to make, so if you're familiar with Postman, which is we can create collections in Postman just so you can test out APIs. We're also hoping to create collections for various APIs that folks use in the no-code community, like MemberStack and others, just so you can start understanding APIs. So my ask from you is, if you're interested, go sign up. But more importantly, tell us what limitations you're hitting and what tools you would like to integrate. And we'll create reusable scripts for that precisely. So we're looking to you to let us know what is after Airtable plus Webflow. I'm sure MemberStack is going to be in there, Banner Bear, whatever food API you want, let us know, and we're really excited to build it out. Cool.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that was everything I wanted to talk about today. Connor, any final parting words before we sign off for No Code Talk until next month?
No. Be sure to get your tickets to the No-Code conference if you haven't already. I submitted my slides. How about you, Aron? Have you submitted your slides?
I need to learn new tools because I'm putting aside the work I have to do for the No Code conference. So luckily, the FinSuite team is going to help me whip my slides into shape. I'm spending the day today writing out my whole and I on the newsletter today I wrote about No Code Conf and my talk. So now I'm stressed out, Connor. I'm stressed out. I'm actually gonna go do it now. So with that, okay, there's a question. So Pascal, I'm happy to. Pascal asks us thoughts on ClickUp versus Airtable. I am not allowed to talk on this subject. So Connor, I will let you speak on ClickUp versus Airtable.
I mean, Pascal, mate, Airtable is like the undisputed number one. Like, I don't know what ClickUp has to offer, but I'm not even going to look at your landing page. Nah, I don't know. I've heard a lot of people talk about it. I think I don't know it personally. I haven't played with it. I'm very, very committed to Airtable. Like, something pretty bad would have to happen with Airtable in order for me to move over. But I do know that if you are interested in learning a bit about it, I think that Matt from AATT, they've got a podcast, and they've got a podcast coming up. Lacey and Ben. I think it's the Visual.
Yeah, Visual Dev FM. Yeah, let me drop a link.
Visual Dev FM podcast, where they are going to debate this topic. So I think they will be able to provide a better answer than I can on the matter. But yes, my short answer is Airtable all day of the week. It's like the undisputed number one for me.
I work at Airtable, so my opinion on the matter is I guess not irrelevant, but quite biased. So I think everyone can guess what I prefer, but I'm happy to expand on it eventually. But honestly, like I don't whatever works for you. If you think ClickUp is cool, that's I'm all for it. Like I don't whatever works for people. So personally, I've never used ClickUp, but I use Airtable for everything, which sometimes is not great, right? Maybe I need a little more flexibility. So my opinion is irrelevant here. Cool. Okay. Well, Pascal, thanks for that. Thanks everyone for joining this week. I will be next week with Steven automating social media for AATT tweets, which is the kind of a new Twitter handle of AATT, just because I felt like I need a place where all of Colleen's great clips end up and we can promote the stream that's just dedicated for that. So we're going to be doing that with Steven next week. And then Ben in 2 weeks is probably going to be on the stream to talk about no code API. And we're going to be writing some code in that as well. So a bunch of cool thing. And yeah, I will see you, Connor, next month for the next no code talk. Thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate it. And I will see you all here next week or next month for no code talk.
Cool. Goodbye.
Bye, y'all.